All right, what is going on, everyone? I am super excited for Q2 2020 Real Estate Agent Launch webinar. So I'm going to run you through some slides, and I will keep on the screen. You'll see me while we go through it so that you see that it's actually me live and in person. But real quick, if you guys can use your chat to answer a couple of questions for me. Number one is, are you a real estate agent or a loan officer? I know that's an odd question, but oftentimes what I find is I get about 50-50 between real estate agents and loan officers who want to work with real estate agents. So that is question number one. And then question number two is, are you brand new using the launch edition, or are you a returning user using a dated edition and looking for a refresher? You can just take a minute and do that. Either way, I'm going to teach it the way I teach it, but it's always good to know who we've got on here, and what everyone is doing. Chat will also be a great way to ask questions as we go through. What you're going to find is that I'm going to go ahead and if it's a relevant question that is pertinent to what I'm talking about right then, I will absolutely stop and do my best to answer it. If it is a question that I know I'm going to be getting to, then I will ignore it until I get to it. Or if it's a question that's a great question but not relevant, I'll save some time at the end to do some question and answer. And so super excited that you're all here. Appreciate everyone giving me their info. In case you're wondering, the difference between the launch edition and the dated edition is just that. The dated edition is dated and the launch edition has instructions in there. So if you do have a dated edition and you've never seen the launch edition, just email me or Adam at winbynoon.com, and we will send you a copy of the instructions so that you have those as well. So I'm, like I said, I'm super excited. It's a little bit different. You'll see I've added a couple of unique slides and a couple of comments you'll see that are slightly different because of obviously the unique thing that we've got going on, right now with, with regards to how we're all working in quarantine and all of that. I'm a little bit unique because I'm here in my office, as you see behind me. That's the real office, not a fake one. Because ultimately I am, we sent all our team home. Our team is all working from home. And so it's just me and my wife and Adam, and we have social distancing going on, and typically a kid or two here. On the other side of my computer in my recliner is my 17-year-old who's doing one of these right now, but she'll keep quiet. I already did my quick poll. And so, I always start off with this idea of why should I plan? And I think it's because of this, right? Regardless of what seat you sit in sales, I think that we're typically distracted by shiny objects. And I think even harder now that we've got kids jumping around, pets jumping around, and we're just not working in our normal routines. There's a statistic by the Stratmore Group that 94% of people in sales arrive at their office with no plan. So of course I've adjusted that, where I say now we actually walk into our dining room or wherever we're going to work with no plan. But ultimately in the end, we wake up with no plan for our day, and therefore 91% of people in sales have inconsistent month-over-month results. And really the whole goal is to level out this roller coaster. And actually what I'm finding is in the emails I'm getting from Win by Noon users is that they are more efficient. They're more excited now about Win by Noon than ever. Like they realize that what they're doing now with Win by Noon has made them more productive through this crazy time, because it's given them a little bit of a sanity. It's a little bit of a framework, within which to work. And so kind of as we go through this, I always want to warn you, it's a marathon. It's not a 100-meter dash. What I tend to find gets in the way for a lot of people using the planner is they want to use it the right way. And I'll tell you right now, there is no right way. There's just your way that you use it. I will walk you through how it's designed, and I will give you different perspectives of how different real estate agents have told me that they're using it. But ultimately, in the end, just know it's a tool for you. It's a tool that's going to help you grow your business and be a little bit more organized. Remember, it's going to be one day, one piece at a time. I'm often asked, what is Win by Noon? And it is just a day planner, right? I have a lot of people are super successful using it truly just to track their schedule. They don't use it for anything else. I've got notes, right? I think it's really a business planning tool at its heart, right? If you actually use it the way that it's intended, is to figure out what are the activities I have to do to get to the results that I'm after. And then last, it's this philosophy, right? This whole idea of getting the most important things done first before you're busy, reacting to everything else. And so everyone always says, where do I start? And I'll tell you what we do is we start looking at a single day. And this is the way that I get people eased into Win by Noon so that you don't have to feel overwhelmed by the fact that it's got the business planning part up front. In the end, just start looking at a day, right? So here's what your spread looks like. Left side of the page, right? You've got that full calendar for just the day. Now, some people say, oh, but Todd, I've got it on my phone, right? Like it's built in my phone. Great. Mine is too. But I actually have, if you look at my calendar, which of course is down here, I have my team call that was at 8:45. Then I dialed for the last 3 hours. Then I've got this webinar on here. And then I've got one scheduled call that I told someone I would call them at 3 o'clock. And that's on my calendar. And then I've got the other people that I plan on calling over on the to-do list. But for me, that's also all in my phone, right? It's all in my iCal. And so I actually have it in iCal. I go in the week ahead, and we'll talk about that. And I actually plot out my whole week, before I start my week off. And then each day I'll actually look at the calendar really so I don't forget what it is I'm going to do. Oftentimes I find that, what's fresh in your mind is what gets done. And so that's where I find most people use it. I do have a couple of real estate agents who actually say I have my ideal day planned in my phone on my computer calendar. And then I actually write into my Win by Noon planner, what did I actually do? And those are typically people on teams who have, an hour to 3 hours a day committed to dialing in the morning, reaching out to their database, their sphere, right? And making those outbound lead calls. And so they'll be writing down if they get distracted. I know those folks too, because if I call them during their lead gen time, guess what? They don't answer my call because it's not what they're supposed to be doing. That would be reactive. They're working on being proactive. And so here we go. We'll just focus on this left side. I already talked about the calendar piece. And then let's talk about what's sort of at the top, right? The top three. So if you look at any of these productivity books that are all in this middle section here, right? Most people in productivity say the most important thing to do is what put out every day, what are your top three activities? And there's two philosophies on this. Most of the productivity gurus would say these are your top three activities as a real estate agent. So it could be lead generation, lead conversion, could be client consultation, could be buyer consultations, could be listing consultations. It could be leading your team, whatever those are. And they would tell you that you put this on there every single day, as redundant as that sounds, because it's a reminder to you of what it is that you are supposed to be doing, because they want you to make sure that you're doing your highest and best activities all day, every day. Now, I would tell you that most Win by Noon users use it just as that. What are the top three things today? So for me, it was dialing this morning. It's the webinar today. And then it's actually to unplug in the evening because I've been working crazy hours and I really want to have a shorter day for a change. Over on the right is gratitude, right? And again, that when I was interviewing people about, putting out the planner and creating Win by Noon, the whole idea of having something in writing, the people who were already using journals are like, it's got to have something for gratitude every day. And so this is hey, this is what I'm grateful for. And my encouragement here is, number one, do it, right? If you've never done it before, you can't have a bad day and be in a bad mood if you're actually focusing on what you're grateful for. I'm grateful for pretty much the same things just about every day. But I always look for something I did yesterday that was really awesome that I love that I'm grateful for. I look for something with my family every day, but I don't just put I'm grateful for my family. I pick something specific. So I would challenge you to do that, to have it be, slightly different as you go through it each day. And then here's the part where people the wheels start coming off the bus. And so this will all take some time and go through it. So this is where we start recording activities. Activities that lead to results. I can normally talk to a real estate agent and I can say, great, how many transactions did you do last year? And most can say, hey, I did 12 transactions, Todd. I'm like, awesome, that's great. And then I'll say, awesome, well, how many of those were buyer and seller transactions? And then again, like most can answer that for me. Most can say, oh yeah, I did, 8 listings and I had 4 buyers. Awesome. And then I say, great, well, how many listing appointments did you have to get those 8 listings? And they're like, don't remember, right? So they're not tracking the activities to get there. And then the other part is certainly some people will say, oh, I had, 14 appointments. My conversion rate is this, 2 fell out of escrow and here's why, then they've got, they got their numbers dialed in. And then it comes to this, well, how many leads did you have to call in order to get the listing appointment? They're like, no clue. And so the whole goal here is to figure out how many buyers leads do I have to call to get a buyer? How many listing leads do I have to call to get a listing presentation, right? So again, success leaves clues, and we're gonna look for the law of averages over time, right? Just because you got, made one call this week and got, one listing and it turns into a closed transaction down the road doesn't mean that, you're going to bat 100% all the time, right? In fact, you're not. So the whole goal is to figure out what is it that I have to do each day, each week, each month, each quarter, how the law of averages kicks in so that you can determine, hey, if I want to close 12 transactions next year, how many calls do I have to make this year? Really more importantly is, hey, I want to double my transactions from 12 to 24, then what is the activity that's required? And certainly the short answer is it's probably double the activity. But if you don't know the activity you did to get there, then you're not going to be able to figure it out. So here you would just write your buyer and seller lead calls. In the old days, we just called them buyer and seller lead calls, and people just put an X in the box. And people said, well, no, I want to be even more detailed on it. So you can put a B or an S in there, depending if it's a buyer or seller. Client calls is below that. Those are clients that are committed to work with you, right? So those are your listings that are already have signed agreements, and maybe they're already on the market. Maybe they're already under contract, but those are the people that you're in transaction with. And then it's a buyer who's committed to work with you, whether they're paying cash or pre-qualified by a lender. Ultimately, those are the client calls. Because again, you want to see how many client calls am I doing during these transactions in order to get them across the finish line. Database calls is just that, right? Your sphere. And we know that you guys have to call your sphere, especially right now. There's just such a great opportunity to connect with people. And so that's a good thing. And then the other is for whatever the heck you want. It's going to be for overflow. If you have a really busy day of calls, I've got a lot of people use it for door knocking. Not right now, obviously, but that would be anything else you want to track. If it's recruiting calls, if you're trying to build a team, something like that, that would be something else you might put in there. The leads is just that, right? It's lead information. Ideally, you're going to take this and put it in your CRM. It's got 2 check boxes there. Those check boxes are for whatever the heck you want them to be. It could be that you put them in your CRM. It could be that you referred them to your lender. It could be that you wrote them a handwritten thank you note. It could be that you wrote the referrer a handwritten thank you note. But ultimately, in the end, this is a great spot. And people have told me over time that having their leads in here is great, especially those people who don't use their CRM. And then at the bottom of that page, you'll total up these activities for the day. And then you'll also notice there's some different things in here. So let's just kind of walk through real quick. And again, every day we're going to total up those activities because it's easier at the end of the week if you've totaled it up every day, right? We're just trying to save time. And it's also just good to look at it and say, okay, my goal is to call 10 people in my database today. Did I do that? And so as you go through, what you'll see is that we got obviously our buyer and seller lead calls, our client calls, our database calls. Quality conversations is who you talk to. And so you'll notice there's a blank line there with a check with a box next to it. Again, the box is something that some people use, some people don't. Some people will actually continue on with the same thing. Was that a client? Was it a buyer? Was it a seller? Was it my database? But ultimately, in the end, I write my clients' names there when I'm talking and calling people. And that's a quality conversation. And that would go something along the lines of where you communicate something of value. So it might just be a quick update on what's going on in their transaction. It may be an update for your database of what their home value is worth. It might just be a conversation about their kids, but it's really where you talk about something. It's not like a contact. If you've been through any kind of a class like Bold, which I've been through on Bold, it's not a connection where you say, hey, I'm Todd, I sell real estate, click. That's not a quality conversation. This is where you actually talk to someone. It's not, hey, can I call you back later? It's actually a conversation. You'll notice that there's buyer consultation and listing presentation. Again, those are you getting face-to-face with those people. We have prospecting time and hours here. And the reason that we have that is because a lot of the teams who use Win by Noon are on the dialer. And so they're less concerned with how many dials did their dialer make. They're more concerned with, did I spend my 2 or 3 hours on the dialer each day? So if you're focused on time, then that's a great place to put that. Real estate reviews. I'm a huge believer in you adding value to your clients. When I ask a real estate group full of consumers why they go to a website, they say for real estate, most of them say to look at the value of my home. And then secondarily, yes, they say that they're searching for a property. But ultimately, they're looking for the value of the home. And then I'll ask a room for a realtor is great. So if your clients are going to those websites to look for the value of their home, who do they view as the real estate expert, you or the website? And then they all drop their head because nobody wants to make eye contact with me. Because ultimately what they realize is that they're viewing the website as the expert and not you. And so if you're proactive in building real estate reviews, I would suggest a minimum of quarterly into your repertoire where you're calling the people who bought a home with you and saying, hey, guess what? Good news. Your house is up 10 grand in value since last time we spoke. Another great tool for that is HomeBot. If you're not familiar with HomeBot, just reach out to me. I can connect you with a loan officer in your area who uses it, because you hook up through a loan officer, but it's a super inexpensive way for you to add huge value to your clients. There's also a blank activity. I mentioned it could be things like door knocking or whatever else you're doing in your business to grow it. Pop buys, I've got people who track that. I've seen some unique things in there. And then the other side is the results side. And again, buyer and seller leads. How many leads did I get? Right? Isn't it good to know? I called 27 people, and one of them actually raised their hand and said, yep, I'm a buyer lead. And then how many became qualified, right? How many listings did you start? How many went into escrow? DB ads, right? Database ads. How many people am I adding to my database today? We know that's really important for you guys. And then obviously close, and then a blank again for something that you're interested in putting in their blank. And then we get to the right side. So again, on the left side is just your to-do list with your top things to do before noon. And then it's really just got the check boxes there for those of you who are checkmark people. The right side is notes. Of course, that's important to take notes. And then think through these personal habits, because I so believe that it's more than just business, right? So this on time is a Michael Drucker term. It's time spent working on your business. So this could be working on your just listed postcards for a new listing that you got. It could be, setting up your open house for the weekend, just working on your business. Could be your new CRM. Social media was added in there against my better judgment, but I added in there after I spoke at Gary Vee's event a little over a year ago, because I do think it's important to track the time you're spending on social media and the number of posts you're doing, because it is an important part of all of our businesses. And I like the time part of it, because then it tells you to get sucked in looking at dog videos or not. HW, handwritten notes, sleep, exercise, morning and evening routine. Again, those are critical things really to be at your best, especially now where health is so important, right? Sleep is really something critical. And so I focus on my sleep, and I would encourage you to look at some of these things and put it in there. And there's also a spot to track a new habit there as well. I've seen a lot of meditation lately in there. I've seen a lot of runners now miraculously starting because of being at home. And then highs of my day is the bookend to gratitude. That's really looking back at your day and say, what was really great about my day? I just love that as a way of looking at it. And then of course, at the bottom, I was proactive or reactive, and I won before noon, yes or no. Again, just kind of a great way to remind yourself, am I doing this? I did a pretty well-attended webinar a couple weeks ago on winning by noon from home during quarantine. It's on our YouTube channel, and it may be worth looking at if you're struggling of how to balance everything that's going on. I just think it's more critical now than ever to be looking at your day and really saying, this is what my intentions are for the day. Because I'm finding that everyone who wakes up and just reacts is riding that roller coaster. And it's hard if you have kids and people at home that you're not used to having at home, but ultimately just know, I think it's really critical. Eventually it's the end of the week. And at the end of the week, you will just total up after your first week, all of that data. And so after the first week, you'll total the data, and guess what? Then you can set a goal for next week. And don't overthink it. If you made 50 calls this week to your database and you didn't get enough leads from making only 50 calls and you've got more time, then bump it up. Say, I'm gonna make 60 calls this week. If you had no buyer listing consultations, which may be a reality right now, then maybe you're just gonna set that for 1 for next week for each of those to try to get some momentum going there. But ultimately, when it comes to this piece of it, there's no rocket science right out of the gate. You're gonna do it the first month, and then first week, and then guess what? You're going to make a target for the next week. And then the second week, now what? Guess what? You got 2 weeks of data. How am I doing after doing it for 2 weeks? And you can start averaging the data. Pardon me for 1 sec. I'm going to sneeze. Only challenge of live. There's lots of allergies. No, it's not anything more than allergies, thankfully. But we had a team call the other Zoom call. We do team lunches on Fridays via Zoom now. And everyone, one of the people said who has allergies also said they were in the grocery store and sneezed, and everyone looked at them. So there's no rocket science to this, right? You're going to look at it over the first week and then set your goal for the next week. You're going to total it up after the second week. And then you can look back over the 2 weeks, right? If you did 50 calls the first week, didn't get the results, and you did 60 calls the second week and you got results that you wanted, great. Then maybe the second week you can set it for 60 calls again, or maybe you still didn't get the results and you got to figure out, gosh, I got to focus on 70 calls this week. I just know a lot of realtors right now are just reaching out and intentionally not talking about real estate with their database on these conversations, really just to check in and see how they're doing. Some of them are calling in and going over to the the 4 R's, right? Refinance, right? Refer to your favorite lender. Most of them can save money. Relocate, meaning they're not quite set up in that current home. Now that they're in there all 24/7, they realize maybe a better house would, better home would make sense. Gosh, I'm totally drawing a blank. Well, my 4 R's, like, this just tells you my day. I got these, by the way, from Coach Bill Hart. Remodel. That was the other one. Remodel. Again, a lot of people are remodeling right now. They realize, gosh, I love my house. I'm going to stay because of everything that's going on. And last one is referral, right? Making sure that you're asking for a referral. And so ultimately, as you go through this, again, you'll see, I'll continue to do webinars at the end of the first month here. I'll throw a webinar out there of how to do your first monthly goal planning session. But ultimately, each week, take the time to do this. I think it's really critical that you're looking back and reviewing, and then you're setting intentions, goals for the next week, so that you really feel like, hey, I've got momentum. What happens is the reason we end up on that roller coaster is because we're not intentional about what we do. Wake up today, go in the office or from home, and you're like, what am I going to do? And it's typically react to emails, versus saying, you know what, I'm going to spend from 9 to 10 and I'm going to call my database, or I'm going to call 5 people in my database. And so let me kind of walk you through, I think, how I would suggest that you look at your week of all the things that I do. These weekly commitments are always the thing that comes back and people think is really great. So here's in that weekly review where you'll be looking at that piece. And again, it's just the same stuff that we've been looking at, but just you setting your intentions for the next week. And so this ideal week has been the thing when I travel around and speak that I get the most positive feedback. Ironically, for realtors, it's doing real estate reviews, and it's for doing the ideal week. And again, it just starts with this, right? So if you actually looked at my ideal week, it looks a little sparse, more so than usual, right? But ultimately, what I had on there was, dial. You can see kind of written underneath, and then it's got all the webinars that I'm on this week. So I've got some webinars and calls I had to be on. I normally don't schedule anything in the mornings. It just happens that right now I want to produce content, and I've been invited to be on a lot of webinars. And then the afternoons are all open for me to react. And so that's sort of how I do it. Week in and week out, I just think it's really critical that you get on there. I normally actually have mine planned out typically 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. Do I right now? No. Why not? Because there's just not, who knows what 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now is going to actually look like. And so I always say this without trying to insult anybody, because I got this from a real estate coach, the team leader of a team, and he spoke before me at an event where I was teaching Win by Noon, and he said, people get in the real estate business to set their own hours, and that is the exact reason they fail. And think about that, right? I mean, that's the beauty of being in the business you're in, is you get to set your own hours, but unfortunately, because you get to set your own hours, you don't always have the discipline that you need around it. I think when you write out your ideal week and you plan these activities, you're going to be more efficient at what you do. You're more likely to actually get it done because you set the intention, you put it in your calendar, right? I believe what gets scheduled gets done. You'll hear me say that a lot. And I don't want you to fail, right? This is what happens. Again, I said, we react to who's ever yelling the loudest. We're spinning in circles, and ultimately, in the end, you control your calendar, right? When you're going to schedule a home inspection, you can say, gosh, I've got a commitment at 11 a.m. That commitment can be to you to make your phone calls. Hey, can we meet at 1? Right? What I tend to find is that we just take whatever's thrown at us. We don't actually ever try to stand up for ourselves and up for our own calendar. And once we do, guess what? We find out it's really easy. And my script is always just that. I have a commitment at that time. I'm super straightforward, but it's a commitment to you. It's a commitment to your clients. It's a commitment to your database to follow up with them. It's a commitment to yourself for your leads that you paid for. If you paid for leads, to follow up with them enough times. We'll talk about that in a few minutes here. And so I just believe in this idea that you have to commit to a schedule of activities, right? When I was a bartender in college, I had a schedule of activities. If I opened, I did certain things when I opened. If I closed, I did certain things when I closed. If I showed up mid-shift and I worked the afternoon, I did certain things then too. I had a schedule that I had to do that was dictated to me. When I was a loan officer, I didn't have this schedule of activities. So until I actually created it, I didn't have the growth that I had. And when I did, I grew 44% in 1 year. A lot of transactions, closed 551 loans that year. And as I mentioned before, what gets scheduled gets done. And so here's what it might look like, right? These daily disciplines, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then what I would call these target day activities. And I like a lot of white space. So for me, my morning is always booked, and it's typically on a normal week. Most weeks, it's only my 8:45 team call. It was driving my daughter to school at 7:30. It was dialing from 9 to noon, except for on Fridays when I have a scheduled webinar that I do every Friday. And that's it. Other than that, it's almost impossible to get something on to my morning calendar because that's what I do. I've made that as a commitment. And so let's talk about what I think are daily disciplines for you. Now, first off, these are things I know you already know that you're already doing, but it's a reminder, right? Every day you should be calling leads. Every day, right? Period. You should be calling leads every day. That's the way you convert more leads. And you should also be calling your sphere every day. And again, you can divide that up and say, I'm going to call for 30 minutes a day, or I'm going to call 10 people in my sphere a day. But the bottom line is that you need to have a schedule to do this. Now, some people say, well, my sphere is really small. Great, then schedule this for 2 mornings a week. But you should be calling leads that you have every day. And some of you have only 1 or 2 leads right now that you need to call, but you should be calling them every day until they either tell you to go away, that they're not buying or selling, or you get their next step or their commitment of what's next. I find that we tend to call once and not twice, not 3 times, not all the times that it requires. And I'll give you some statistics on that as we go through. The other is target day activities. Now, you may be doing these activities already, but I'm guessing you just do them randomly as they happen, or you could be doing them on different days. And if you're doing them different days and it's successful for you, guess what? Keep doing it. I pick these days. They're not set in stone, but I would tell you that I've got probably about 2/3 to 3/4 of the realtors I talk to who use Win by Noon say, gosh, I do it exactly how you say it. The ones who don't, either were already doing it on a specific day and were successful with it, or they're members of a team where someone else in their team is making some of those calls. They're literally just making lead and database calls all day. And the third are people who say, I just don't have that many things going on. And so instead of doing it spread out throughout the week, they'll actually bulk them together in 2 or 3 days in the week. And it'll make more sense when I go through it. Now, these are just specific days that we commit to do specific activities. And it's kind of like spirit days. If for those of you who are younger, for me, it was my kids. I didn't have cool things like crazy hair day and pajama day. But the bottom line is that we create this to be more efficient and more consistent. So hear me out on this. We're more efficient when we say we're going to do something in a given day, because ultimately in the end, then we're looking in there. So if I am going to be giving my, calling my transactions that are in process and giving them updates, it's more efficient because I'm doing the same thing all at once. I'm not stopping. I'm not answering the phone when it rings. I'm getting these calls done. I'm communicating with my clients, which is what they say is most important to them in a transaction. We all know that. And so I'm much more efficient. I'm also more consistent. And the reason I'm consistent is the minute I started telling my realtor partners and my clients, guess what? I'm going to call you every Tuesday with a status on your loan. Like I didn't want to look like a moron that didn't do what I said I was going to do. So I became more consistent because I planted that flag and said I was going to get it done. So here's what you would do on a Monday in my world if I was a realtor and what Win by Noon users are doing. I'd be calling leads. I'd be calling my sphere, right? Because we're going to do that every single day. And then I'm just going to review, right? Hopefully some of you guys, Monday might be your day off, right? Because you worked all weekend, but I'm really going to review. I'm going to add up my numbers and Win by Noon if I didn't do it over the weekend. For me, I normally do it on Saturday or Sunday mornings when I'm drinking my coffee and everyone else is asleep. However, I've got time scheduled on Mondays when I come in that I can review if I haven't gotten it already done. It's just a great way to get yourself, set up. It could be getting leads from an open house into your CRM, right? It could be referring the leads from an open house, over to your lender to call. It could be negotiating a contract, right? Turning in a new transaction that you got, right? And then we're going to commit to these activities that we're going to do as we review it, and then we're going to get our week launched. And so I tend to find that for most people, this takes typically less than 30 minutes. I got people who can do their review in 10 minutes or less. If you're super busy and you had a great weekend of activity doing real estate, awesome, then it might take you an hour or more. But this is the shortest of the days because really the whole goal of it is to get your email cleared and get yourself going in the right mindset and then start doing those other activities. We get to Tuesday, again, we're going to call leads, we're going to call our sphere. And then I think this is your in escrow update call day. Why? Number one is because more loan officers use Tuesdays for this than any other day. And so it's a great day if they're making the calls to get the information from your loan officer, tell him or her to call you early and get that for you so that you can give, these update calls. And so really all you're doing is you're calling your client, you're calling the other agent if you're the listing agent, you're calling the other agent if you're you're calling the buyer's agent if you're the seller, you're calling the seller's agent if you're the buyer's agent. You can check in with your transaction coordinator, their transaction coordinators. And then really all you're doing is telling them what's next, right? Hey, here's what's next on your loan. or on your purchase. Hey, we're expecting, talk to your lender today. They're expecting the appraisal back later this week. Again, you're just keeping everyone informed of what's going on. And again, if you only have a couple of transactions going on, this is pretty quick, right? You don't need all the way till noon to get it done. But what I find is people are not consistent with it because it's not on their calendar. Again, what gets scheduled gets done. They're not consistent with it because they haven't said to anyone, hey, I'm going to do this. So instead, you just kind of do it randomly. You call them when the appraisal comes in, which is great. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just telling you that this is what your clients really want through all of the surveys that we've done. Wednesday, we're going to call leads, call our sphere, and then we're also going to do our pipeline protection. And so I think Wednesday's pipeline protection day. I teach this as pipeline protection day to loan officers as well. And it's really critical. It's critical because of this. Your clients have an internet addiction. You might have an internet addiction too. But the bottom line is this, right? Your clients are on there. So again, if remember, I said this is for your, we're calling pipeline protection day. It's actually for your buyers and sellers that are not in escrow, right? So these are the listings that you have. And they're wondering, well, looking online and seeing, well, gosh, my neighbor's house down the street's under contract and mine's not. These are your buyers who are getting your listings you're sending them. And they're like, I saw that other house go up in the neighborhood and I didn't get it. Well, they don't know that it's, got power lines behind it, or it's 2-story and they only want 1 story, or it's got a pool and they didn't want a pool. Whatever reason is, it didn't come into their search for some reason that you sent them, and they're still looking for it online. So you've got to protect that, because we saw that on the lender side all the time. We'd be calling our pre-approved buyers and they'd say, yeah, I haven't heard from my realtor in a couple of weeks. Yeah, they're not sending me all the listings. I keep seeing other listings pop up online, and they don't realize that those aren't accurate, that those may not be, the listings that match up to what they're looking for. But if you are talking to them proactively each week, guess what? You're less likely to lose them. What are you going to say? You're going to give them rate and market updates that your lender gave you. Again, if there's something going on, especially with all the chaos right now in the mortgage business, it's a great thing to talk about, right? The loan program. If they got a jumbo loan or a down payment grant loan or FHA or VA or USDA, guess what? They probably need an update from you. You should be getting it from your lender, because guess what? Those things have changed over the past couple of weeks. It's important to make sure that if your lender's not updating your clients, that you are. Hopefully your lender did. I think holiday calls are the easiest and the best. It's a little harder now, but certainly if I was calling anyone this week, I'd be asking them, what are you doing for Easter or Passover? And then I'd be putting it in my CRM, because guess what? When I call them, the next time I call them, I'm going to say, hey, how was, Easter with your Easter egg hunt with your kids, right? And normally we'd say like, your Easter in, Kansas with your parents, but we don't know when's traveling anywhere. But holiday calls are great. There's 9 months a year where there's a holiday, and you can always ask people what they're doing. Even now under quarantine, it's more important because they want to tell you what's going on. And then my favorite script is just checking in. Hey, I'm just checking in. How are you doing? And it's, again, so critical right now. And of course, you might remind them who their lender is. If their lender's not using Win by Noon, they might not have heard from their lender in a while. And it's just one of the things I combat day in and day out with the Win by Noon loan officer community, is make these calls, because you should be doing it. And just so you know, their slide for this would say, it would be the realtor reminder, right? And so they all, you guys all laugh when I say it, but it's true. And I tell them, hey, when I teach a room full of realtors and I say your lender reminder, they all laugh. But the same thing happens there. We find if you guys are really busy, that you're not always communicating as well as you can. And so that's really important. And then let them know what's next. Again, communication is what they want, number one, first and foremost. They always want to know what's next, because they're really nervous. Call people who are buying within 30 days every week. Call people who are buying within 60 days every other week, and call someone who's buying out more than 60 days every 3 to 4 weeks. I tell you, here I am in Phoenix, Arizona, right? In the spring, we had the Barrett-Jackson Auto Auction. We had the Phoenix Open. We almost had spring training. We had a couple of games of that, but people come in all the time for that. They would apply for a mortgage because they would say, gosh, next year I'm going to buy a house when I'm here. Or maybe they were thinking about buying one while they were here. They didn't buy. I kept in touch with them. I called them every 3 to 4 weeks. And guess what? Then they remembered who I was that next year, but my realtors never did that. And so they were always, grateful when I referred them back to the agent. But it's just a huge miss for you if your lender's not doing it, you're not doing it, that person who you talked to that was a lead now, when they come back, whatever that season is, they would come visit you, make sure that you're keeping in touch with them. And you're going to call them until they buy or die. Thursday, we're calling leads. We're calling sphere. I think you figured that out by now. And again, you can start stacking these. If you only have one transaction in escrow and you only have, 5, pre-approved clients and 2 listings, you could do those all in one day. I wouldn't fault you for that. I just think it's easy to spread out each day. Cause then again, you can go in and crank out these calls in 30, 45 minutes, an hour, and then move on. And again, I remind you again that your clients have an internet addiction, right? So again, we're calling them because when they go online, right, to get this estimate, right, this obviously is suspended now, but it's going to come back, right? They're going to get a cash offer. And, you know, so that's really the key. The team, and I know the folks really well, who work for Zillow in the Phoenix market, they sold $1 billion worth of real estate last year, $1 billion. That's a big number. And so your clients are going on there. If they're going to get their estimate, they're going to get an offer, right? Redfin obviously suspended theirs as well. But again, you go look at Redfin and guess what? They're going to get a cash offer. And that number, just so you know, in 7 markets, when they did their last briefing that they did where they talked about it, was they were getting an offer every 5 minutes. Now they were in over 20 markets. So that's going to continue on. That's where the real estate reviews I mentioned come in. And that's why I think it's really critical that Thursdays you take time and say, gosh, you know what, look at your database and decide. You could say, I'm going to call, it's 26 letters in the alphabet, right? So you could go through it, say I'll call A and B today, this week, I'll call C and D next week. And so that's how you could do it quarterly, is by running through 2 letters in the alphabet a day. Some days you wouldn't, weeks you wouldn't have any, but ultimately in the end, be reaching out to your clients and keeping them up to date. Friday, again, we're going to call leads. We're going to call our sphere. Again, what are we going to do? We're just going to do our weekly wrap up. Again, you guys work 7 days a week. You need some time off. And so you have to have a day where you just really wrap up. Like, what else happened? What loose ends are out there? What do I need to get ready to show my clients this weekend? What do I need to do for the open house this weekend? Just tie up those loose ends. One of the things on leads, just so you know, the lead statistics are that if you call leads 7 times, then you are likely to 90 to 94% likely to reach them. Those are statistics from Chris Smith, who wrote the conversion code. So he has that lead gen system called Curator. And so those are his real numbers from his research. And then MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, did a study years ago. I think it was originally done for Boomtown, but ultimately they found that if you called a lead 7 times, they said 90% likely. Chris Smith says 94% likely. So either way, call 7 times. Statistics show that only 10% of people in sales make more than 2 phone calls. And again, you got to keep calling your clients. That's why it's on there every single day. What about weekends, you're asking? I'm hoping you're taking weekends off. I know you're not. That's why I say you can, bundle these. Maybe you're taking off Tuesdays or Wednesdays, or maybe you're just squeezing in time off when you can. But you guys have the hardest job, and definitely think you guys deserve some time off. I do have people, by the way, that call leads on Saturdays, just for whatever that's worth. And so eventually you'll get through this and you'll do your first monthly review, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? And it's just got a little bit more detail on there. But ultimately what you'll find on there is it also has conversion rates, and people get stuck here like, well, what's a good conversion rate? First off, some of these conversion rates you might not care about, and that's okay. A conversion rate for me is for you to see, am I doing better this month than I did last month? Because all you're trying to do is if I converted 50% of my presentations last month, maybe this month I can do 51%, right? You're looking for improvement. It's so hard unless your business is really similar to somebody else who who uses Win by Noon to compare your conversion rates. But if you're in a brokerage and you guys have a stock listing presentation that you and your buddy are using, and they're converting at a higher rate, then yeah, absolutely see what they're doing and see what you can learn from them, because maybe there's an opportunity for you to improve. But ultimately, I always say, don't worry about what someone else is doing. Just worry about improving yourself. And I say most likely skip this for now, but we'll go through it. Again, at the beginning of the year, we did 2020 goals. And then we do Q3 goals, right, that you'll be looking at. So I'm sorry, Q2 goals, right? So, we did do 2020 goals. You can go back and you can start over if you're brand new, and you can start from, the year. You've already got the first quarter closed, and you can say, gosh, the first quarter, I just want to replicate that times 4. You could say, gosh, the first quarter, I just want to replicate it by 2 because I'm really worried about what's going on right now. But ultimately, you see on here that there is units, family served, dollars, production, because some people, depending on, if you sell $1 million houses, you like dollar production. If you sell $200,000 houses, you like units closed. And then something else that's tangible for the third one. I see income on there the most. We put referrals on there on this one. And then personal, right? What else is something that you want to make sure that you get done? I see a lot of vacations on here. I see a lot of lose weights. But ultimately think through what it is that you want to commit to this quarter or this year. And again, you're not there yet, but returning users at the beginning of each quarter are going to commit to those results that they want, right? To match up to the business plan. They're going to commit to their activities, and you'll get there. But just don't worry about that beginning part today. That's why I had you skip and I started you with just a day, right? Just a little baby step. Get a day done. Again, it's got the same thing on their habits of success. And I always say here, get specific on this, exercise, right? I'm going to run a minimum of 2 miles, 5 days a week. I'm going to go work out at F45 2 mornings a week. My morning routine says, meditation, it's coffee, meditation, something spiritual or learning, and then get the family up, right? So my evening routine is no screens 2 hours before bed. I try to stop eating 3 hours before bed, which is a failure all the time. And I wear nerdy blue blocker glasses. And then critical relationships is funny. We threw it in there because we had space and people just love it. It's really, who should I be focused on? I think that's really, really, really important now. I mean, who is it that you really want to connect to? So for me, my family's always on here, my brothers, my parents, my team members that are on here. And then there's typically always a couple of my friends and then just some other people that I'm really trying to forge a better relationship with, which will be on there each quarter. And then this other piece on here, I always throw out there, and it goes back to that, look, there's a squirrel thing. We're always looking for the next best shiny object. And I think this idea list is a great way to keep yourself from spending money where you shouldn't. It's a great idea to keep yourself from jumping in on something before you've done the research. And anytime you hear someone or see online, someone doing some cool new thing, some new Instagram ad that mysteriously showed up after your friend mentioned it to you, not that they're listening or anything, but ultimately this is where you're going to list those ideas. And then you're going to go through your idea list and you're going to do a brain dump of, hey, these are the things I want to make sure I get done this quarter. And then you're going to realize there's no way you can get those all done. And so you're just going to go through and you're going to ABC them, right? You're going to prioritize them, which ones are the most important. And then you're just going to pick 1, 2, or 3 projects to work on. And you're going to create the project piece here with a completion date. And I found that people who've done this and taken the time to actually create a project list and a completion date are more likely to get it done. And the reason that we put in the steps, as dumb as it sounds, is that when I ask people, why didn't you get this done from the coach's chair, they would say, well, I didn't get it done because I didn't know where to start. And so just writing down the first couple of steps. We do have a project planning tool. You can always email me. I'm happy to send it to you. It's just a great, just a blown up version of this with more action plans and some delegation in there. But ultimately what I find is that people who, they might have 25 project ideas, and then they knock out 1, 2, or 3, in a month or a quarter. And then you'll go back through that list next quarter and you'll look at it. You'll take your old planner, you'll stick it out on one side, you'll put your new planner on the side, and you'll go back through and you'll rewrite down those items. And what you're going to find is number one is what was a priority last quarter may not be a priority this quarter. Something that, that you thought might be next up no longer is going to be next up. Something that you thought you definitely were going to do is no longer even on the list going forward. And so it's just a great way to track what it is that you are hearing and seeing that you might want to do and actually executing on a couple of ideas. Because in the end, that's how we grow. And that's where the on time comes in. You have to schedule on time in writing on your calendar in order to make sure that you get stuff done. Take a deep breath, right? You'll have good days and bad days, right? There's just days where you're not going to do a great job, but that's okay, right? People are like, well, shoot, I didn't remember who I talked to. Well, guess what? You have a little thing in your phone that's called recent calls, right? You have text messages. You can see who that is. In fact, I forgot to say that. When it comes to conversations, yes, you can have a text conversation, but again, think through, messenger conversation, yes, but again, we know that the best hand-to-hand combat is over the phone, and in that you lose out on the fact that people just don't hear what it is you're saying. They read it, which is about 8% of communication, but there's another 37% of communication. That's the verbal stuff. It's how you say it, but 55% is nonverbal. And I think you just have a better idea getting that across, especially now that you're on Zoom meetings, you're seeing some of that. Real quick, just some best practices. You have to carry it with you. Like, I was devastated last Tuesday. I forgot my new planner. I forgot it. I drove my daughter's car and I thought I left it in and it wasn't. It was just literally sitting under a jacket in my house. That is what it is. Not proud to say it. Luckily, my old planner still had Tuesday in it because it was the 31st. And so I was able to use that and then I transferred it over. But I hated that because I wanted to have all my notes and stuff in there. I just transferred over the total of numbers. I didn't worry about the rest of the stuff. But carry it with you. It's a whole lot better than a napkin at a restaurant. Plug into our Facebook Win by Name User Mastermind group. It's starting to get better. It still needs some more interaction, some more people in there. Commenting. The more comments we get, the more active people, then the better it will be. Get an accountability partner, right? That's always great. Find someone else in your office, whether it's another real estate agent or maybe it's a loan officer who introduce you to Win by Noon, but get someone to help hold you accountable. We're currently doing actually a 5-week challenge right now because there's 5 weeks this month, but it's free. It's inside of the the Facebook group. If you go over to files, there's a form you can download, and then you just literally email it to me, and I'll hold you accountable. So that's kind of cool. It's free. And then here's how to get a hold of me. And you know, you'll see right now, I'm working on some webinars for the next coming weeks, but you'll notice that I'm not planning too far ahead right now, just because I've got a lot of things getting thrown at me where I'm being guests on other people's calls and Zoom meetings to really help people through this time. And so I don't have as much stuff planned on my calendar currently, but just check back there, you'll see it. I try to go into the Win by Noon group and post when I'm putting stuff in there, but you know, ultimately then you can subscribe to the calendar to let you know anything that's upcoming. So keep that in mind. All right, that was a whirlwind. How are you guys doing? Any questions I can answer? If I didn't hit on something you were hoping I would hit on, then shoot me an email. Just know that I'm super grateful that you joined in today. I'm super grateful that part of our community, and just know that my goal is to help you close out this year with success. I know that we're in a hard time right now. I know we're all going to get through it, and appreciate you spending part of your day with me, because I just know that there's a lot of things you could be doing right now with family, with Lead Gen, with other things, and I'm here to serve. So have a good one. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.